Okay.
Okay, hello everyone. We are here to discuss with some nice people about COVID-19 and disruptions, opportunities, and challenges in shipping. I'm very happy to moderate this event, which is brought to you by Youngship Rotterdam in communication with Mercy Ships in Netherlands. And I just want to let you know that at the same time that we are live on the YouTube and we have this nice discussion, we are running some charity campaign, and this event is free of charge, and all the donations will be given to Mercy Ships for only good cause, and just try to help people in need. We're going to share some more information about Mercy Ships from people that they are very good on this, and I'm sure that you are going to enjoy the event. I'm going to tell you some things about how we are going to proceed for the webinar, how the agenda will be take place. So first of all, we will have three very important panelists with us. First of all, Captain Julian Schut. He's a project consultant and project manager for STC Group, and he has a very thorough knowledge as he has served on board many different type of ships from different size, different vessels, containers. He's the guy we need to have on our panel to discuss. And most importantly, he has very big nautical knowledge about Mercy ships, as he has served on board, and he was captain as well in the recent years, and he's the nautical support for the organization. Thanks again, Captain, for being with us. Then we will have Effie Smrilaki. She has a very deep knowledge in shipping, as she works for Lascaris Shipping Group, and at the moment she's occupied as a crew operator with thorough knowledge about crewing and the people that they are running the ships. And at the same time, she's a project coordinator for one of the biggest databases in Greece, promoting and helping young people in shipping and recruiting talents and giving them opportunities to thrive. Last but not least, we have Mr. Joshua Lee. He's working as a project manager for one of the biggest cruise lines, and he's going to speak to us about new builds, opportunities, and share with us his knowledge about cruising. We are going, the speakers now will have some time to discuss about their topics, and then all of you will have the opportunity to drop your question through our social media on the YouTube, and we'll do our best to answer your question and bring you with some very nice outcome about the event. I don't know, Captain, if you are ready to present your nice stuff.
Yes, thank you, George. I'm ready. So thank you for having me. It's a privilege to be in this webinar this evening to talk about some of my work, but also especially about Mercy ships, which is part of my work as well. Overall, I wasn't too familiar with Youngship, but I do know some of the board members and also the advisory board members. And knowing them, I know I can only imagine what good quality your organization is. So I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you.
Yeah.
I am going to share my screen now. I hope that you will actually see that.
Yes, we are with you.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, this webinar about shipping in a post-COVID era. My name is Julian Schutte. I just want to share some of my passions. Actually, work is one of my passions that I have. And I work with that, and there are actually some of them I have more passions. I can share them later. But one of them is working for STC International. STC International is part of the STC group. I work there as a senior maritime project manager and work on consultancy projects worldwide. That includes, for example, assisting governments to enter the IMO whitelist. I also teach at the STC. I'm one of the lecturers of the MLU, Maritime Logistics University, Maritime and Logistics University. And I teach there maritime economics and maritime finance. I enjoy that very much as well. Very good master program, I have to say. Also, I'm a member, alumni of the MEL Erasmus University, and I like sharing that knowledge with the students at the MLU. But most of my time I work for Mersey ships. I work in the Marine Operations Department, and I'm also one of the relief captains on board. I actually hope to go back to this vessel in about a month's time to take over as captain for a few months on board. I started in Mersey ships in 1997, so I go already a long way with Mersey ships. I saw the first ship of Mersey ships, the Anastasis. Maybe some of you still remember that vessel. I saw that vessel in Rotterdam. I took a tour on board, and 5 days later I was sailing with the vessel to Benin, West Africa. I'm still very excited and enthusiastic to be part of this organization after almost 25 years. And I'm also very excited to hear, and thank you, George and Youngship, that this webinar is also concerns a collection around Mersey ships. And I can only recommend that, of course, to you. Mersey ships is a non-governmental organization entirely depending on private sponsoring. We run our vessel. This is the only vessel operational at the moment, but soon vessels with a volunteer crew, and they contribute tremendously with their time and effort to the work we do. Volunteering is then also another way to get involved with Mersey ships, and I will get back to that at the end of this presentation. First, we look at a new era, as the title of this webinar says, and maybe you've seen this already. Yeah? This is used by motivational speakers, and it's a bit misused as well, where they state that the word crisis in Chinese actually means danger and opportunity. If I pronounce it well, it's like YG, and Y is then danger, and the G would be opportunity. But the correct way to explain this from Chinese into English would be more danger at a point of juncture. So that's, I think, also where we are at in shipping. We are at a juncture. We see something that at least people from our age haven't seen before, and we will really have to see how this will influence shipping as a whole. When I put some thought in it and also read some articles, of course, when I look at shipping economics in or after the Corona era, we see, of course, a tremendous fall in economy at the moment. And some economists expect a much faster bounce back. Well, we'll have to see that. There are economists that say that at this point we are at its lowest and we will go up from here. Also, Bloomberg is stating that. But knowing that shipping is a derived demand, we will have to see what the effects on shipping are. And I'm talking there as shipping as a whole. Of course, shipping consists of many different markets, where we see some markets like the crude oil market doing very well, and other markets are really, really suffering. I would expect also a further constraint to capital for global shipping finance. We've seen that after the financial crisis, 2008, and I expect that to see that even further. We might see changes in the environmental policy agenda. I see, for example, in France, sponsoring Air France, that there are demands on Air France related to new environmental measures to be taken. We have seen, of course, the importance of digital technology. We see that also in telemedicine. We are also involved in that in mergerships. And overall, I think what we've really seen is the importance of shipping in the logistic chain, and certainly also the seafarer in it all. The seafarer also brings us to mergerships, because we operate, of course, with seafarers. And we've been affected, as just about any other person in this world, by this COVID-19 crisis as well. But first, when I make the change to mergerships, first let me state why we actually run hospital ships. If we look around the world, we see that 5 billion people have worldwide no or only insufficient access to surgical services. We see, and this has been reckoned by Lancet Commission, this is the source that I'm using here, we see that around 143 million surgical interventions are missing annually. So that's a lot. But where are they primarily missing? Now, if you look at this map, you see that the redder the country is, the less people have access to surgical care. And even though there are 325 million surgical interventions per year, we see that only 6% out of these 325 million are taking place in developing countries. There we see a tremendous shortage, and again, taken from the Lancet Commission. So what's mergership's answer to that? We come with vessels, and we come at the moment with this vessel, the Africa Mercy. We go to a country, we stay in port for about 10 months at a time, and we do surgical procedures on board. This vessel has 5 operating theaters, and that's where most of these surgical procedures take place. And some we do different procedures. That's also depending, of course, on the surgeons we have on board. But this is one of the surgical procedures we do. This is a tumor on a little girl. This starts at a small bubble. In the Western world, this will be taken away at an early stage. This is growing, and this is the end result. And on board the vessel, this tumor will be removed. Now, that's the one side, but what's of course very important is that we do capacity building, that we don't only do surgical procedures, but that we really help and train the people to do these procedures themselves. Here you see actually some training on medical equipment. Also very important, also during this time, during the COVID-19 era, we see how important the equipment, certainly the equipment at ICUs, how important that is, and the maintenance of that equipment. So that's what we do as well, and we do that more and more, and we work very closely together with the countries and the healthcare system in the countries that we serve. And in the end, what we really want to do is have a lasting impact, so that even generations after we leave again, that the healthcare systems will improve. And how important do we see it now in the COVID-19 era, how important it is to have good healthcare systems in the countries available. So yes, we want to leave a sustainable impact. And by doing all of this, we bring hope and healing to the nations. We do that, as mentioned, with vessels. And This is our one vessel operational at this point, the Africa Mercy. 5 operating rooms, 84 hospital beds on board. This is an old train ferry that operated in Denmark. It has been converted to a hospital vessel, and we've been running with that since about 20 years now. The exciting part is that this will not soon not be our only vessel, and what we are doing at the moment is that we are building, with the support of all our sponsors, we build a new vessel. It's called the Global Mercy, and we hope it will be operational by the end of this year or beginning next year. And you will see that, of course, this vessel is a larger vessel with a much higher impact compared to the Africa Mercy. We are very excited to bring this vessel online. We are extremely excited. In the past, we've always run with second-hand vessels. This is the first time that we intend to run with a new vessel built for its purpose, to be a hospital ship. So we are, as I said, we're extremely excited, and we almost cannot wait to see that vessel. And this is an artist impression of the vessel sailing. Yeah, we can almost not wait to get this vessel online. But you understand, of course, that bringing this vessel online, which much more than doubles our capacity that we have at this point, we will need also many more volunteers to man the vessels. And it's not just maritime staff that we're looking for, it's technical staff overall, it's electricians, it's mechanics, it's hotel engineers, electronic technicians, but also, of course, medical staff. We look for hotel staff, galley staff, etc. You name it, we are looking for them. And my last picture is actually a picture taken in Madagascar from a few years ago. Due to the Ebola crisis at that time in West Africa, we had to go to Madagascar for 2 years in a row. And here you see a picture of the crew at that time. I'm also in there somewhere on the left. And here we see around 400 volunteers from more than 40 nations. And they work here on board the Africa Mercy. And as I said, soon we need many more volunteers. And my last question that I want to end this presentation with is, will you join? And you can look us up at www.mercships.org. You can also find many videos on YouTube, etc., from Mercy Ships. That's my presentation for now. So thank you very much for having me. And then I want to hand it over back to you, George.
Yeah, dear Captain, again, thank you very much for your very detailed presentation. And I think that everyone can understand what you are doing over there. And personally, I just want to express that because I had actually the privilege to be on board and serve even for 1 month in the last dry dock in Las Palmas, that at least for me, it was an eye-opening experience on how I'm going to approach, life in general. And as you said, it's something that brings hope to people and healing, because sometimes, we take things for granted. And by these opportunities, I think it's something that everyone should join and try it, to see how it works and to see what is going on over there. I'm sure that as I see, there are many of questions already, but I'm going to come back to you in a later stage to wrap it up.
Very good. Thank you.
Effie, please feel free to share your screen and share with us your nice insights.
Yes, give me a second, please.
Great.
So first of all, thank you, George, for the introduction. Thank you, Youngship, for inviting me to this very interesting webinar. Well, hello from Athens, Greece. My name is Effie Smirlaki. And I would like to speak from the ship owner side, as I'm a crew operator in Lascaris Shipping Company, as George said in the beginning, and the impact to the crew members on board. First of all, let me introduce myself. I have graduated from University of Piraeus, and my studies were focused on maritime. And I work in Lascaris Shipping Company since 2015 as a crew operator. Lascaris Shipping Company is one of the largest ship management companies in Greece. In 2016, Ms. Susanna Lascaridis has launched the Real-Time Graduates Initiative, which is a non-profit program that connects young graduates with the Greek shipping cluster, and it is the first free access database of its kind in Greece. So, the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak has affected the shipping industry to a large extent. First of all, has brought exceptionally challenging trading conditions and has created significant implications for the ship owners and the operators. Has disrupted the supply chains with an unusual effect on supply and demand, and generally on business and society. Crew managers attempting to repatriate or relieve the seafarers are facing a number of challenges, and this may be the tip of the iceberg for the shipping industry. We will analyze all this later on. The price of oil has sunk to levels not seen since 2002, as demand for crude collapses during the coronavirus pandemic. This was just the start of what was about to become a global crisis, for all the sectors, including the shipping as well. Also, there are enforced delays in shipbuilding and repairing activities, including scrubber installation. This was just the start of what was about to become a global crisis for all sectors, including slowing demand in goods productions and exports. Asian ports in countries including South Korea, Taiwan, and Singapore also started introducing screening procedures at their hubs, putting Chinese crews under quarantine and working to limit the spread of the virus. From the very beginning, these initiatives caused significant setbacks for both the cruise and shipping sectors, which found themselves dealing with orders and trips cancellations, spikes in costs, and the radical drop in trade opportunities. Finally, the container sector, another category that significantly relies on China, fell victim to the coronavirus outbreak. The container sector is naturally less liquid, but there is a reduction in rates and values. Containers actually are the most closely linked to economic activities, and these are down all around the world right now. Well, right now I will analyze some data that are very crucial nowadays. Over 1.6 million seafarers keep the world's merchant fleet at sea, delivering fuel, medicines, food, and equipment to those countries where large portions of the population are currently under curfew as governments try to contain the coronavirus pandemic. There are estimations that the volume of global merchandise trade was falling by 13%, and there are estimates of the decline of 32% or more. Also, container capacity was down 11% this April. More than 100,000 seafarers are presently in effect marooned at sea because coronavirus lockdowns worldwide are preventing them from entering countries and finding flights on which they will return home. Hundreds of ship sailings have been cancelled and trade has been reduced in line with the slowing global economy. BBC has recently reported that with 384 sailings cancelled, the first half of 2020 could see a 25% reduction in shipping, with total 10% annual fall in 2020. Ship owners should always be careful to observe and refer to charterers' orders, ask for expert legal advice, as might be the case, in order to avoid repudiation of the contract, allowing a charterer to terminate the contract and claim damages due to delays, port restrictions, quarantines, etc. So the shipping industry will have to cope with many demanding changes, but we will investigate how the crew change challenge is also proving difficult. The ship management companies will have to manage and solve major issues regarding all crewing operations. From the ship owner's perspective, the crew managers will have to adopt new strategies in organizing smooth crew changes in order to control cases such as if the crew are unable to disembark the ship due to recent port of call, they must stay on board, or if the replacing crew is unable to enter the country for the scheduled crew change due to their country of origin, some crew will have to remain on board on mutually agreed extended contracts. When the global coronavirus restrictions are relaxed, crew change problems may become even more challenging. The world is not going to open up in one go, and countries will come back step by step. The number of crew whose contracts are overdue is growing, and to change large numbers of crew who will need to be replaced at that time will be a challenge, particularly if ship operators are trying to remain within existing budgetary restrictions. We also need to bear in mind that replacing an entire crew who are overdue could jeopardize the safe operation of the vessel. Another problem is that the majority of the vessels are in the tramp trade with a schedule which is not known, which is actually making it more difficult to decide what will be the next ports. It is very difficult to foresee where vessels will be at a certain time, and therefore very difficult to consolidate the crew changes. In the meantime, leading shipping companies are intensively working to ensure seafarer welfare and viability of ocean supply chains, whilst the costs are rapidly growing. COVID-19 has created extraordinary difficulties for the seafarers as well. Border closures and travel restrictions have had a major impact. Many have been unable to go home at the end of their contracts and have had to live with their extensions. The ship management companies will have to consider preparing 9-month contracts instead of 4 or 6 months that they are doing now. Others have been unable to join ships to start their contracts, creating potential financial difficulties to their families as well. All these major issues will have social, family, and personal impact to the seamen. And yet there is a group of these strong men and women working against the background of these increased challenges, whose role is so vital in sustaining our supply chains, as well the food and the medical equipment. The maritime industry recognizes that the restrictions and health protocols adopted by many countries with regard to air travel, movement of ships' crews, and their embarkation, disembarkation in ports will have as a result that many crew changes may need to be postponed at least until May 2020 or even longer. The incubation period for COVID-19 is generally accepted as being within 2 weeks, but several countries are imposing even longer restrictions. One of the biggest hurdles to overcome at present is the lack of commercial flights to facilitate crew changeovers. Part of the problem is that each country has its own measures in place to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. The shipping community will have to work in progress to set up an industry standard on how joining seafarers should be tested and stay in self-isolation before traveling. This has 2 purposes: to develop a common standard policy which, if followed, would allow seafarers to cross borders and join the vessels, and to reduce the risk to existing crew members of bringing the virus on board. This is something that will need a discussion later on, I think, with all the members. The coronavirus pandemic has a huge negative impact on crew performance. To begin with the ship's casualties, if service engineers are unable to join the ship, they cannot perform the specialized maintenance, which could jeopardize the proper function of the ship's equipment. Unfortunately, it is a challenge not only to the crew to get on board, but also for the owners to have their superintendents, technicians, class and flag surveyors to attend the vessel so as to maintain it. Seafarers must be officially recognized as essential workers in the fight against COVID-19. It is known that they have limitations on the amount of time that they can work on board, which is governed by each vessel's flag. Even if this period can be extended in exceptional circumstances, it can be detrimental to the mental health and well-being of the crew to work for such extended periods without any downtime. Unfortunately, the mental health and human rights of seafarers are threatened. Staying on board beyond the maximum allowed period can also cause accidents and injuries, which can be detrimental to the seaman's future. In particular, the challenges resulting from this pandemic can also affect the performance of the seaman, which may lead to accidents. You will notice that all these definitions are linked to each other and are inevitable because not obeying them can influence negatively the whole shipping industry. So it is imperative to maintain close contact with the local port authorities and local agents as crew managers to ensure that we will try our best for the seamen. At this stage, I want to point out that this pandemic has created new challenges regarding cruise P&I liabilities that we will face as crew managers along with legal and chartering specialists. These challenges are separated in 4 big categories, which we may discuss analytically in the Q&A session later on, if anyone is interested. I want just to set an example on the category of illness. In case there is a crew member who is ill, and according to doctor's advice, he must go home for further medical attendance, the challenge here is that there are many ports globally, for example in West Africa, that there are many restrictions and it is not allowed to perform any crew changes. This is one of the many challenges that from now on a crew manager has to deal with very often. Also, from the commercial point of view, if there is a crew on board who shows symptoms of COVID-19 and the vessel is of hire, who will cover all these costs? So all these matters and many more are extremely new, and the shipping organizations will have to create a new plan in accordance with the regulations on how to deal with them. But do the shipping organizations have done what it takes to support our seafarers? Well, thankfully, the industry is responsive, and to raise the awareness, I will share some very kind words and actions of shipping professionals and organizations whom truly support our seamen. The ICS, along with the ITF, have jointly prepared some letter templates aiming to assist facilitation of free movement for seafarers to and from vessels. Also, ILO and IMO have stated that seafarers should be officially recognized as key workers. Also, the Secretary General of the IMO, Mr. Kitak Lim, who addressed a personal moving message to the seafarers who said, "You are not alone, you are not forgotten." At the same time, Intertanko has issued a relevant guidance paper which outlines the plans and procedures to be out in place in order to protect the seamen from COVID-19. And last but not least, the Secretary General of the ICS, Mr. Guy Platten, said that he is proud on how the shipping industry responding on the challenges that arose from COVID-19. To end my presentation, I just want to highlight that we truly support our seamen, and I would like to take this opportunity to share a photo of a chief officer who is currently serving on board our bulker vessels, on board Glafkos, and this picture was taken last week in Brazil. So I want to keep this short, and in case you have any questions, you may submit them to the chat. Thank you for your attention. Stay safe.
Dear Effie, I would like to truly thank you for your very detailed presentation because, you know, you very nicely remind us that out there when we speak about shipping, there are someone on board just taking care of the ships and they're not going alone around the world. I just want to highlight this phrase from the Secretary of IMO that the seafarers are not alone and they are not forgotten, because sometimes I think this is the case. And now that we have this huge disruption with COVID-19, we see how important is everyone to stay on board safe. And why? Because this will have some consecutive applies from commercial side, from operation side, many disruptions. On the top of that, I just want to personally again highlight the great job that you are doing for the real-time graduates as well in Greece.
Thank you very
much. Because yeah, I think I know a couple of people that they have even started from trainees, and they are doing very fine in their careers, and they are managed to thrive again. So congratulations for this as well. And I'm sure that I see from the chat many questions will come also for this.
Thank you, George, very much for your points. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Now we have Joshua. Joshua, we will be very happy to hear your insights.
Yeah, good evening all. I will share some insights strictly from a new building perspective from within one of the bigger cruise lines in the world. I work for Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines. Let me share my screen. 1 second. And go full screen. Visible, I hope?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. So I work for Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines within the New Building and Innovation Department. To give you a little bit of the backstory, I'm a member of the on-site owners representative team, and we are basically on-site to keep the shipyard honest, let's say. So to make sure that they follow the contract and the technical specification that have been signed for the new build vessel. And also we are sort of the first line of communication in case of issues or questions that the shipyard has, and many of our team members speak the local language. Our new build operations at the moment are in Finland, Germany, France, Italy, and the Netherlands. And it's always helpful, especially for local people, that they can communicate within their local language, as opposed to having to switch to English or a third language. I've been with Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines for 2.5 years now, and I've participated in 2 new build projects. The first one is Celebrity Flora, which was delivered last year, and we are currently in the last stage for Silver Origin, which should be delivered by end of the month, beginning of June. This is a picture of Silver Origin during her sea trial. This was a week and a half ago. And it's a luxury cruise vessel specifically built for the Galapagos Islands. It's quite exclusive, as it only has 100 guests, and if I'm correct, it will have 90 crew members. So there's a lot of crew for that small number of people. It's more catered towards the more affluent customers, as it's not cheap. I will not be able to afford a trip on this cruise. So from a new building and innovation perspective, what are some of the disruptions we have experienced? So of course, nobody expected this pandemic to arise in such a big manner. So of course, nowadays we pretty much paid attention to every government decision, not only in the Netherlands, but also in our other new build sites. And for the Netherlands, it's okay because it's a small country, so the national government, the measures they take apply for pretty much the whole country. While in the bigger countries, let's say France and Germany, we have to deal with more of the regional governments, which may not adhere to the national government's decisions. There was of course no time to make any adjustments because as soon as the measures were announced, they were also imposed. So it just really creates quite some chaos, especially in the beginning, because of course all our timelines are then changed, and for the announcements of the imposition of all of the measures, there is no clear end time, no clear end date. Luckily, more and more of the measures are relaxed at the moment, so that clearly helps us, like all the other businesses. In general, our project milestones, well, there are delays that is just unavoidable. So we have to deal with that. Luckily, the delay on our current vessel it's still quite within reason. And as I said, we expect to receive the vessel and by end of the month. So the challenge, well, of course, it's all about scheduling. You can create a beautiful plan, but with this pandemic, you have to be able to be flexible. As Effie already mentioned, we also need to have crew to come to the site. Well, that at the moment is very difficult, if not impossible, due to the EU, for instance, banning non-EU individuals from entering the EU area. A lot of our crew members are from outside of the EU, plus this vessel that we are currently building is specifically designed for the Galapagos Islands, which is in Ecuador. And in Ecuador, the law states that I believe 90% or 95% of the crew has to be an Ecuadorian national. So normally we would have the crew in so they can train and they can learn how to operate the vessel. That, of course, is now at the moment impossible. And of course, we have our materials. We sourced materials from all over the world. Of course, we have received the majority, but some of the items are stuck in Asia or in the Southern European countries. So we have to be flexible. We have to look in, can we receive these materials on time? Can we perhaps cancel them if the factory has not started on producing them? We have to look for different avenues, different channels to receive these items. It's basically constantly being flexible every day, looking at the whole bunch of emails and see what can you do today, or which problem is arising, can you attack? Manage expectations is always a very, very important one, especially, of course, externally towards our customers. In this case, our customer is Silversea Cruise Lines, because we as new build will deliver the new build vessel to them. So we have to make sure that we communicate with them on a day-to-day basis. Or what are the latest milestones? Or have they changed? When can we deliver the vessel? Or what, all these steps. And of course, internally within the royal family. Then we have the opportunities. Well, I'll keep it very general. Of course, now it's time to review all of our processes. Can we eliminate some of the bottlenecks that we have? Again, it's very difficult to prepare for a pandemic like COVID-19, but we should definitely look into our internal processes and find out where we can improve them. Again, with communication is always the number one most important milestone, because without communication, things will not happen. And we have experienced this quite a lot, especially when it comes to our material. Yeah, at some point we have sourced material in Italy, and when the government decided to impose the lockdown, some of our factories were just closed, and it was very difficult to receive any sort of notice on when we could expect the material. Will they still be able to produce the material? When can we expect it? When will they go back? All of this is very difficult, and of course, it's understandable with the lockdown. But communication lines need to always be open, and it's something we can focus on how to improve them. Of course, from a new build perspective, are the current designs for the cruise ships, are they still valid? Can they still be used? Do we have to make changes? I know in the Netherlands, there's talk about this 1.5 meter economy. Do we have to apply that on cruise vessels too? Luckily, the projects I'm involved with are two relatively small cruise vessels with only up to 100 guests. But you can imagine the bigger cruise vessels that we operate with 6,000 guests, it would be very, very difficult to make changes, especially as it comes to the distancing. But in the end, basically our overall slogan is, as a company, we just have to make ship happen. Do what we can, be flexible, find different solutions in order to get the work done. That's basically what it comes down to. This was just a quick presentation from the new build side. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joshua. It was very nice to have your insights, and having in mind again that of course the demand for people to going around the world will never stop, and it's very used to see how you approach this and you are dealing with. Before passing to the Q&A session, I just want to remind to all of our attendees that we are running the campaign about donating money to Mercy Ships. This event came free of charge to you by Youngship Rotterdam, And at the same time, we are running a charity event for collecting money for good reason, and especially for mercy ships in Netherlands, a ship hospital, healing people and giving hope around the world. Okay, thank you all for your very nice presentations. Before passing to Q&As from the attendees, I just want to ask a question with a quick reply from all of you. I mean, we are speaking about a new era regarding COVID in shipping. Is it really going to be a new era? I mean, let's say in 5 months from now, we are going to forget about COVID and just come back without any changes, or what do you think? This will bring some opportunities to your industries, or probably it will be just a pandemic and this would be it? Captain, if you want to, I would be very happy to have your thoughts about this.
Yeah, thank you, George. It's of course, it's very difficult to look into this, into that next phase. I think a lot will depend on how are we going back to normal. Joshua already mentioned the 1.5 meter or 2 meters or 6 feet environment that we're going in. Is that, for example, is that gonna stay? Is that gonna stay around the world? And what kind of impact will that have? In the end, it's all about a matter of demand supply in shipping. That's economics.
Of course.
It's really to be seen if how the world picks up economically wise, how the world will pick up after this crisis, and how long we will see the tripling effect of this all. To give a clear answer to your question, I think we will see changes. I think we will see changes. We will see changes in demand. People will think harder, also purchase-wise. And in supply, we will also see a change. We will see most likely companies not making it through this crisis. We might see another consolidation, for example, in the container market. So yeah, I do think, yes, we will see changes. Yeah.
Noted. Effie, any thought about what is going to happen?
Well, I think Captain already covered all the important matters on this, but I will totally agree with him that for sure we will face a new era. This will not end, I think, in 4 or 5 months from now. And all of us, all shipping companies, all the companies that belong to the shipping cluster, I think, will have to adopt to this new challenge, and we'll have to make new measures. As a crew operator, I will tell you that we will have to change the contracts for our crews. We will have to inform the families that the seaman will be back home in 9 months from now. And this also the ship owners will have to pay many money for the smooth crew changes in different ports, because due to many port restrictions that every country has right now, you have to cooperate with many agents and airlines to find what is the best for your crew. And I think that this will last a long and has created many questions, and I don't think that we can answer them now or in 1 month. We will see how it goes.
I think in general, from my experience in shipping, it's better if you wait and see, rather than taking, very big decisions without even knowing. Joshua, any insight?
Well, in regards to your question, is this going to be a short-term issue? I hope so. I think
everyone.
I think we should all hope. But yeah, in reality, that's not going to be the case, and so I think it just comes down to we all have to adjust, and yeah, whatever the captain and Effie said, I agree. Wait and see, and make the necessary adjustments. And if it's not, and hopefully if it's not this year, maybe next year we can go back to let's say the normal way of living.
Yeah, let's
Yes,
hope sooner. But yeah.
Sorry, especially the shipbuilding industry will face many difficulties, I suppose. Who's gonna order a new ship right now? It's very challenging, I think.
Now you put him a very nice challenge, but you seem that he's concerned now.
Yeah, well, it all depends on the guests. Once we go back into operations and the guests return, based on that, we can make plans. And at the moment, all of our new projects are still scheduled to proceed. So we'll see if and again, it comes down to what kind of measures will we have to take on board.
Yeah.
What will become practical.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, let me reply some questions. I have our friend Thanos Piliopoulos asking about how he can join Mercy Ships, and I think our social media manager Bart Bowser replied about possibilities with a website. It's great to see young professionals with social concerns want to contribute, and thanks, Captain, again for the nice presentation. Yes, the session will be recorded and shared afterwards to our social media, and you will have the possibility to watch again the webinar. We have a question about Captain, how the COVID-19 will affect Mercy Ships about helping and assisting people. For example, the port calls, some crew changes, some probably distribution of the medication will affect the situation. Yeah,
Definitely. It affects us already in that way. It affects us also, as mentioned already, with crew changes. For example, I'm trying to go myself to the vessel to take over, and we will have to see how that will function. We also have a rule of 14 days quarantine on board. So if I go soon, I'll be placed in a cabin, and there will be a 2-week overlap. So the one person has to serve 2 weeks longer while the other is waiting to come out of quarantine. It will affect, of course, supplies to the vessel as well. As mentioned in my last slide, we have people from many different national supports. And yeah, that's of course a challenge overall to bring people in, to send people out. We have people serving from 2 weeks to about, we have people serving over 20 years on board.
Yeah.
But you can imagine that we have a high turnover of staff. We have a staff of about 400 people, but in total in a year, we have about 1,200 people serving. So a lot of changes, a lot of flights, and yeah, that's affecting tremendously Mercy Ships in itself. Of course, the last thing you want is ending up with COVID-19 on board your vessel.
Of course.
So, the measures on board are also tremendous in avoiding getting COVID on board.
Noted. Thanks, Captain, for your answer. We have a very nice question about Effie from Victor. Victor is asking, what's your view of the protection of the crew in regards to inspections and audits? And as I understand this, it's in general the interactions that are coming from ashore to on board, and if you are going to take any measurements to prevent the interactions and how this would be limited.
Okay, this is a question that okay, of course, as we're already, all of us is following not only on board or in the ports, also in real life right now ashore, we're taking all the precaution measures in order to avoid the pandemic disease. So my proposal is for the seafarers to be very careful with the door frames and handles, with the keyboards and all the equipment's interfaces, with the staircases, and also to implement frequent health checks by by the medical officer, who will most probably will be the chief officer, and to take the temperature of the crew members every day or every 2-3 hours to be sure that everyone is very healthy. Also to implement procedures for isolation. I mean that if you have any port state control officer or for audits for the auditors, and if there is suspicion that some of the crew members may have something, to isolate them and protect the rest to not get the coronavirus.
Yes, I think, in general now with the main concern is, how the ships are going to operate and meet all the limitations in all over the ports, and of course, grant the free partake and everywhere. Just a question about Joshua. Sorry.
Yes. I want to point out that, of course, as a shipping company, we have already informed all the crew members on board to take all the precaution measures and be very careful. And in case they think that something is wrong, to let us know immediately and to take all the measures. Also, but okay, you can continue to your next question.
Yeah, thanks.
I read the question in the chat, that's why.
Okay. Yeah, we have just one question for you from our friend Mr. Spiliopoulos. Apart from delays and changes in the process of building new ships, does the crisis has affected the overall growth of the strategy of Royal Caribbean Cruises?
I am not really at liberty to speak about those type of topics.
Okay.
But in general, I think as all of our cruise vessels are anchored at the moment, of course, for this year, our goals will be very difficult to accomplish. Because now it's been, maybe 2 months that the majority of our vessels are anchored. So that's quite a big chunk out of the year. And then once we go back in operations, we will have to adjust. But once we know the specific date, before that, we can't really make any sort of statements on strategy and goals for 2020.
Mm-hmm. Clear. We have one question that I would like to address to all of you, and have your short reply from Maria Proton Ontario. We see that at the moment the current oil prices are hitting their low levels. Do you think that this is something that soon it can come, let's say, back in the previous levels, or it will continue also after COVID-19?
I think the price will go up because demand will go up. Once people are allowed to travel, airlines will need to have, or in this case, will need to have fuel. Once people are allowed to go back onto the cruise vessels, companies like Royal Caribbean will need to be able to purchase or will start procuring oil. For as far as we don't have done that already. So it's the price it might not go back to the previous levels, but it will not be as low as it was 2 weeks ago. That will be impossible to maintain.
Okay.
Well, I agree that a negative price will be very hard to maintain, of course. Of course, price will go up in the end. As Joshua says, demand will go up. But also keep in mind that oil reserves are tremendously high at the moment. So this will take quite a while for this oil price to come up again. As slowly the economy starts coming up again, yeah, it will certainly take months, if not a year, to come up again. Yeah.
Great. Effie, I don't know if you want to add something.
I totally agree. And well, when the market will open up again, of course, the oil of the price of the oil will be up again. We don't know when this will be, but when everything will start getting back to normal, I believe that we won't face any issues on the oil.
Okay, and honestly, there are plenty of questions, but I think we are also time limited. I just want to address a question again to all of you. What do you expect, let's say, for next year in shipping industry? And just adding a comment from Abraham, if you would have your let's say top 3 recommendations that you know about how this situation can change for good or for bad, perhaps tighter clauses on infectious disease, sharing the liability. What's your insights about this one?
Well, my overall recommendation would be very simple. Wash your hands.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so it's very difficult to make recommendations for the next years, but yeah, I hope everything will return to normal. And of course, from my perspective, I hope everybody will feel safe to come back and cruise with us in the next coming years.
We wish the same because we like cruises, you know.
For sure, we will have to be very careful to wash our hands, to everything. But to point out just three, it's difficult only to limit on 3. But it's, I believe that all this phase that we're right now have, maybe will take 1 or 2 years, and we don't know how the industry will change. I think.
For example, for the crew, just one thing on what you are saying, are you thinking, for example, to re-educate the crew about the pandemic, or how, for example, as Joshua said, to wash their hands or follow some different procedures on board? Is it something that you are investigating?
Well, we have implemented some risk assessment plans for COVID-19 that all the crew will have to follow and take into consideration very often. But education, what exactly do you mean? That
for example, try to have some different education about the seafarers on board, about how they are going to face pandemics, let's say, or how they are going to control a crisis. But as you mentioned, I think you have already this in place, I think.
Yes, with risk assessment plans, and I don't think that we'll need something more on that. Okay, of course, to let the seamen know about the situation and what is going on with their countries, and how difficult it is to repatriate them, or all this. But with the implementation of risk assessment plan, I think that we are covered from now.
Okay. Captain, your ideas?
Not sure if I fully understand the question, but I think
if you want me to repeat.
Yeah,
no,
just repeat it if you could.
Well, I was thinking if we would have your thoughts about the shipping industry and what we should expect for next year, and if we could use 3, let's say, possible recommendations about pandemic and about infectious disease on board. Isn't something that probably people in charge in commercial, in operations, lawyers have to share the liability, or it's something that it has to go on one way?
I think this starts with, and that's been recognized already in this meeting, that the importance of the seafarer. I think we'll have to take really the seafarer as a key worker, which is already mentioned a few times. And for key workers, we also need key elements in place. And that's, of course, our personal protection methods. That is, as Joshua mentioned, it is washing hands. It is having our systems in place, and really taking the seafarer very serious, because they're a key element of the logistic chain. They're a key element of keeping this world afloat in that way. Just think about bringing PPE from China to Western Europe or the Western world or other countries. Ships play a very important part in all of this. And seafarers have to be taken very serious in that.
Of course, yeah. I think it's a matter that also we discuss how important the people on board are. And I mean, having all of you speaking about people and ships, I think it's crucial to understand, all of us, how this is essential for global shipping. So at this point, I would like to sincerely thank, first of all, Captain, for your time, sharing your insights about Mercy ships and about your knowledge about shipping in general. And I truly wish that more volunteers will come on board. We go out of this bad disruption at the moment, and we only look on the positive side for the next day.
Yeah, thank you very much, George. One thing I mentioned, the website. We do have a site as well if you want to join us. That is apply.mercyships.org. So
okay, I will make sure that we'll send to everyone also after this webinar.
Therefore, again, thanks for having me. Thanks for doing
this. It was
we very much appreciate this.
Yeah,
very much.
Effie, I would like to thank you as well for having you and sharing all this very, very nice knowledge about crew on board, and having all this information that most of us, we don't really have a clear picture. As you know, as you said, sometimes we forget the people on board. And it's crucial to understand sometimes under difficult situations how essential they are, and how we must ensure that they are safe everywhere they are.
My pleasure, George. Thank you very much for this webinar. Thank you.
Yeah, and Joshua, thanks again for sharing your information and your knowledge about cruising. I really hope that we will go out of this situation very soon, and again, all the cruise ships will be full of passengers.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, we hope so too.
Great, and at the end, I would like to thank all the audience that we had today live on social media and taking the time to attend this webinar. I think it was a very fruitful webinar for all of us. And I would like to announce that the next webinar will take place on the 20th of May and will be organized by Youngship Rotterdam. Thanks again, all of you. Have a great evening and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Great evening.